Welcome to Articulated. I'm Glenn.
I'm Eddie.
And this is the Hasbro Marvel Retro Collection, Spider-Man. Spider-Man was created by writer Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko in 1962's Amazing Fantasy 15.
Yeah, we know this already.
Absolutely massive shout out to These Damn Toys for letting us review his figure early. Everyone please go over to Instagram and give his photography a follow. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
The Amazing Spider.
Oh, and if you want to skip ahead, time code's in the description.
While Spidey has seen countless releases in Spider-Man classics and its legacy lines, the iconic design has been released only a handful of times in Marvel Legends proper. The first was in the 2003 Urban Legends box set, originally released as Parachute Spider-Man in Classic Series 6. The next two released in the Sinister Six and Fearsome Foes box set, released in 2004 and 2005 respectively, both reworkings of Snapshot and Superposable Spider-Man. It took 10 years to get the next release in the Phil Urich Hobgoblin wave, dubbed Pizza Spidey by fans. That figure would be re-released in the San Diego Comic-Con 2016 Raft box set and the Retro Collection Wave 1 in 2018. While not a Marvel legend, Medicom released their own take on a 1/12 scale Spider-Man in 2019 that many consider to be definitive. Now, in 2020, Hasbro has created their newest iteration of the classic design. But how does it compare to Pizza Spidey and the Moffax? That's something we'd like to help answer.
Retro Spidey's packaging was designed by Harry Moore with photo compositing by Jerry Wilson and pays tribute to the Toy Biz Spider-Man animated series blister cards of the 90s. But don't be fooled by the packaging. Out of the box, the primary head is based on Spider-Man's definitive design from the late 60s to the mid-80s. Popularized by John Romita Sr. and refined by artists like Ross Andrew, Gil Kane, Keith Pollard, and Romita's own son. The vast majority of the animated series draws from the very stories these artists illustrated. Most episodes that introduce classic villains are at the very least loosely based on the stories from the 60s, which makes Retro's alternate head, based on the work of Steve Ditko, all the more appropriate. The figure itself stands 6 3/16 inches tall, or just over 15.5 centimeters. That's about 1/16 of an inch taller than Pizza Spidey and 1/8 of an inch taller than the Moffax. The Armanzola Wave Bucky Cap is a tad larger at exactly 6 1/4 inch, while the Marvel 80th Cap, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Love Triangle Wolverine square up nicely. And for good measure, here's Lightning Collection Dino Red Ranger and McFarlane Multiverse Superman. One of the things that made Pizza Spidey so definitive at the time was the plethora of accessories, hence the name, in addition to a bath piece. Retro Spidey, aside from the Ditko head, comes with just one additional set of hands for the exact same price, relatively speaking. The wall crawler has the ability to, well, stick to walls, so the lack of appropriate hands is greatly missed. While the web slinger gets web slinging hands, he doesn't come with any hash in which to sling or slash, no. The Game Reverse Spidey web accessories aren't necessary, but their inclusion would have bolstered the value of this figure. That's the main thing missing from this release: value.
Retro is based on the Sunfire Buck with whipping hands from the GameStop exclusive PS4 Spidey and was sculpted by Rene Eldreddy. He's composed of 31 pieces, including the accessories, only 5 of which are new: the 2 heads and the upper, mid, and lower torso. That's actually 16% lower than your average comic-based figure. Compared to Pizza, Retro makes up for a lot of that reuse with its overall better proportioned body. While Pizza is tubular, more like a collection of breadsticks, Retro has a little more meat on his double dough crust. Does that make sense? The new torso pieces add totally different cuts to the Sunfire body, breaking up the musculature in a more natural way. Compared to the 12-inch Spidey, also sculpted by Renee, and which uses the same articulation scheme, the obliques and the... hold on. Anterior superior iliac crest, like the part of the pelvis that sticks out, is a little more pronounced than I'd prefer, but that's more of a stylistic choice than a flaw. Really, there are just two things I don't like about the sculpt. Firstly, this figure is a victim of circumstance. It's coming out just before the new pegless joint technology begins integrating into the line. That would have pushed this from an iterative upgrade to an entirely different ballpark. Gone would be the glaring red pegs on the underside of the arm, and would have brought the sculpt much closer to that of the Mafex. Secondly, the standard arms on the Sunfire body look like they're sunken into the ribcage, much like the Pizza Spidey body. But just like Vulture resolved this problem with that buck, so too would the arms on Shang-Chi from the same wave. Not only proportionally, but it would add a significant amount of range of motion. But we'll get to that later. When this Spider-Man figure inevitably gets re-released with pegless joints, Dwight, Ryan, Dan, if you're listening, please modify the Shang-Chi arm sculpt instead. They would not only heighten this figure, but any new release on the Sunfire body. While there aren't a whole lot of new pieces on paper, they've got to be like half his mass. It doesn't quite hit the attention to detail of the Mafex, but what's here is a vast improvement over the previous release, earning Sculpt a 7 out of 10.
23 of the 31 pieces that make up Retro Spider-Man and his accessories have some sort of paint applied, which is over 51% higher than average comic-based figures. He's nearly covered head to toe with webbing, and black lines separate the reds and blues of the suit. The application is surprisingly clean, even continuing into hidden joints, but sometimes doesn't line up perfectly. Aside from the accessories, this is the only instance where Pizza Spidey might actually edge out Retro depending on your figure's QC. The webbing just lines up more often in comparison. When these hit store shelves, you're going to want to closely inspect some of these more problematic areas. There really isn't that much wrong here. Sure, there aren't any sprays or washes to bring out the sculpt, but that's rare for Legends and honestly wouldn't match the style here. That kind of paint detail is way more appropriate on the Mafex. There is an ever so slight color difference between the red of the mid and upper torso, but it's largely covered by the web lines. It's up for debate whether the Deco scheme on Retro is better or worse than Pizza. They're so close that they're almost interchangeable, but what's here serves its purpose perfectly, and it's a lot more than we usually get on Legends figures, earning Deco an 8 out of 10.
35 points of articulation link Retro Spider-Man together, a whopping 5 points above average for comic-based figures. Pete's head sits on his neck with the newer dumbbell joint, and even has a notch for extra range looking up. While it creates quite a lot of negative space, even in the vanilla pose, the payoff is a bit of extra head tilt, but not much more than you might find with the standard neck scheme. The new torso consists of a diaphragm joint and reverse ab crunch combo that grants the torso natural lateral tilt. The diaphragm also rotates, negating the need for a waist swivel. Meanwhile, the butterfly joints get about the same range of motion as Pizza Spidey. The swivel hinge shoulders fully rotate and hit the T-pose standard. Biceps swivel, and unfortunately, elbows barely pass 90. Compare that to the range on Shang-Chi, and it's clear why these arms would be a better fit for Spider-Man. Hands act as hinges front and back, and swivels get standard range. Like the Mafex, Retro has drop-down hips, allowing for an increase in range both forward and back. To the side, it's a clear improvement on Pizza, but still doesn't hit the full split. Thighs swivel, and the double-jointed knees get fine range, but the boot cut is a very clear upgrade over Pizza. Finally, feet act as hinge swivels and get appropriate range. The majority of this articulation scheme is a great improvement over the Pizza Spidey body. I'm not the biggest fan of the dumbbell neck, not for any lack of articulation, but for the gap it creates when fully extended. I'm not sure if I prefer the ball hinge neck exactly due to the added range, but maybe a ball joint at the base of the neck, like Dr. Doom, could help. And like the 12-inch Spidey and the Mafex, toe hinges would have taken retro over the top. This scheme is a huge step in the right direction, and like the Lightning collection, something I'd love to see completely integrated into the line, earning articulation a 9 out of 10.
So, is Retro Spider-Man a better figure than Pizza Spidey? Yes, in almost every way. Is it better than Medicom's offering? In our opinion, well, no. But it's closer now than ever before. Mafex Spidey still has retro beat in all categories except one: price. Retro is currently under a sixth of the price of the Mafex on the secondary market and has comparable sculpt and articulation. For the value, Retro is the clear winner.
If you've made it this far, there's a good chance you enjoy our style, and the easiest way to see more is to subscribe. Consider leaving us a like, and remember to follow These Damn Toys on Instagram for more photos filled with movement and color. Y un gran agradecimiento a Sentinel Collections for transcribing this video for our Spanish-speaking audience. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and even Reddit at Articulated Show. Links in the description.
With its masterfully sculpted new joints, Deco that covers nearly the entire body, and a standard-setting articulation scheme, this new Retro Spider-Man easily earns a final score of 8 out of 10.
Do you disagree with us?
Did we miss anything?
How would you improve the figure?
Let us know in the comments.
In our previous review, That Wrestling Hound wrote,
I have no connections to the Age of Apocalypse storyline, but if I had to pick one figure to buy from that wave, it would be this one.
Same, actually. But the new Sunfire is actually a great figure too. Could make a good Human Torch if you've got some acetone skill. I'm Glenn.
I'm Eddie.
And this is Articulated. Okay, I am already fucking sweating, and it is just the history portion, so I'm gonna take a small break. Sweat is dripping down onto the floor. The towel stinks. Fuck me.
Oh my god, I don't think Koji's getting this back.